Hey everybody out there, this is Seto, and today for you guys we are going to be doing a top 3 video on the channel today. Now the reason I'm doing a top 3 and not a top 5 or not a top 10 is because these are 3 things that I want to focus on and talk about. And they can go in any real order, so don't worry about the order of which they come up. But these are 3 things that I feel like for the sustainability of this game and for the health and betterment of the game need to happen, or some changes need to be made to continue to see the game thrive and survive. Because if you're watching this video, and just like me, I love Yu-Gi-Oh! Too, and I want to see this game survive. I want to see it go on for multiple more years, continue to survive, so I can play it with future kids, future generations. It's fun. I'm even doing that right now with younger kids. I'm turning more into Grandpa Grandpa Kaiba or Grandpa Yugi, Mr. Moto, because I'm literally more of a teacher now than I am a duelist, it feels like some days. But I still love the game for all its flaws and everything, but these 3 things I feel like for the betterment of the game need to change or need to be addressed by Konami, I feel like. And the 3 things that I feel like, as a player and as you a viewer, you will probably say, yeah, these are changes that I would like to see happen in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So if you would like to see them, leave a big thumbs up down below. And without further ado, let us get to the number 3 on this list. And like I said, these are in no particular order. So our number 3 is something that I feel like has recently, over the last year, mainly, has become a major issue in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! More so than in the past. And what is that? That is short prints in main core sets. And I say that again, in main core sets. Now the reason I say main core sets is throughout the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! There have been short prints in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! There has been. If we go back to the last Hidden Arsenal that came out, Gusto Emerald and Lava Chain, from what I remember, were very short printed. They were short printed and they were hard to come by back then. Now granted, this was multiple years ago. You're going back to 2003 when Evil Swarm came out. So you're talking about stuff back then. I don't think there's a lot of statistics from that era. It wasn't as refined what a short print was. It was a card that, okay, we had short print rares, short print commons, and main sets. But, you know, sometimes in these side sets, there would be shorter printed cards. Trishula, for example, in Hidden Arsenal, harder to come by. Brionek, hard to come by. So these different cards were hard to come by, but they were in side sets. For example, when we got the Legendary Collection, some of them were harder to come by, certain cards that you wanted. But these were side sets, or reprints, or upgrades of hollow cards into new rarities. They weren't core booster boxes sets as much. And if it did happen, it didn't happen as much or as drastically, and the prices did not reflect that for the most part. Especially when we got a hollow in every pack. That didn't seem to be a case that there was that many short prints. If you guys recall, the first set that we had that in, we had Trap Tricks Rafflesia, Solemn Strike, Performapal Magician, and Infernity. Not Infernity, Cybernetic. The Exceed monster, that's great. I'm having a brain fart right now. We all know what this card is. Infinity. So that set had a lot of good things. People thought the cards would be super expensive, and they were expensive, but they weren't as expensive even before that quick ban list came in and kicked Performapals to the ground. That stuff was not as super expensive to some degree. The Solemn Strike settled, I think, around 40. The Infinity was around 30 to 40. The Performapal stuff was a little more expensive for that hot minute, if I remember. I would have to go back and look at the history, but for the most part, when we started getting hollows in every set for a while, there wasn't really short prints. It was just, okay, this card's a very sought-after card, and it's, you know, 40 to 50, but it's not like $100. It's not $80, $90. And as time has gone on, though, especially this past year, we've seen, especially in recent sets, when we had, and this is known facts, we had Ghost Bell and Impermanence short printed. Impermanence, a card that many people speculated upon its initial release was a good card. It will be played, but would be around 40 to 50. And where is it resting at the moment that I'm making this video? $90, almost double what it was thought to be. Why? Because it was short printed. The Ghost Bell Girls. Most of them have always been a little bit of money. Ash being probably the most expensive upon its release. But that's because it was Ash, and Ash is a very good card. But Ghost Bell, it's only good as the meta is. And granted, we do use it in the meta currently, but what was it, the original price when it came out? We knew it was short printed, secret rare. It was around 30 to 40. Okay. You know, it's still expensive. We thought it was going to be like a $25, I remember. People were speculating. And where is it now? Around 65 to 70. Granted, it's being used in the meta, so that means it's more demand, supply and demand, less supplies, more demand. Konami wants you to open more product to make money. And we're even seeing that now with Colossus, a card that is a staple 3 of in the extra deck for Thunder Dragons, which could mean the price, but from what we've seen and from what we've heard and from ratios, it's a shorter printed secret rare for sure. And like I said, we've seen this in side decks, side sets before. Look at when we got the Necros cards, Brionac, Trishula. They were a little bit more short printed than the other ones. But these were, like I said, again, side sets. And that has always been a thing for Konami. Side sets to push them, they short print it, the most sought after cards. But when it starts to creep into your main sets, that's the problem, I feel like. And you've seen that this year when Yu-Gi-Oh! Is pretty much cheap Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks have become less and less of a thing. And when even you reprint these expensive cards, you still short print them. Ash in Legendary Collection Kaiba's world, short print. Ash in Ride of the Valkyries, or the Valkyrie set, short print super. You get 1 per box if you're good, if you're lucky. So you gotta buy 3 boxes to get 3 Ashes, hopefully. Yeah, that's not cool, man. That's not cool. That's just wrong, especially when you've reprinted the card 3 times. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has gotten, for a long time I was a proprietor of saying, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has gotten cheaper, 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 cheaper. This year, the year is not even done. As the year has dragged on, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has gotten so much more expensive. Just, you have to run hand traps. You gotta run this. You gotta run that. Thank the Lord that Call by the Grave was not a secret rare and a common instead. But still, you get what I'm going for this. The game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Has gotten too expensive, and short prints in main series sets has been a major problem. I understand for side sets, you're trying to push them, but main core sets, where we get our best cards and our generic cards for the most part, that is not cool. That is not cool at all. And that has never been a major problem for the most part throughout the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! For the most part, I mentioned. So that is the reason my number 3, and like I said, I want to go into these things in detail, is my number 3 that things need to change in Yu-Gi-Oh! Short prints in main sets need to stop. When you reprint a main card that is sought after for the 3rd time, do not short print it again. That was, I thought everybody was going to have an Ash. Nope. Not like that anymore, is it? 30, 40 bucks. Yeah, supply and demand. I get it, but Konami's got a brain. They know what they're doing. But it's just something I wish they would change. But that's just wishful thinking. So let's get to our number 2 thing that I think needs to change in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So guys, the number 2 thing we're going to talk about that I feel like needs to change in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! To continue to make the game healthier and better is links. Yes, links. Now, people may not understand what I'm talking about with links. I am fine with links. Some people out there may say, well, links hurt, exceeds, synchros, fusions, yada, yada, yada. You can't use the other mechanics as much. Okay, I got that. I understand where you're coming from. But that is not my main concern with links as a player that has played competitively and as a player in general. My problem with links is somewhat similar to what happened with pendulums. If you guys remember when pendulums first came out, and even up until we got Master Rule 4 and we had a whole bunch of rule changes, was pendulums were overpowered. By that I mean you could have a lot of pendulums in your extra deck and then you spam them all back to the board using the pendulum marker zones. And then you just go bleh, and then you just go off again. So even if you cracked a board, you could just spew the board back. You could just put a whole bunch of stuff back into it and remake the board again. So in that aspect, it was pretty... it wasn't fun back then if you played back then, even though it was only a couple years ago. And links to that description, while links I don't feel like are as powerful as what pendulums were at their height necessarily, they do have one standing problem. The U-link. Yes, the U-link is something that I think needs to be addressed in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I feel like, just like what they did with pendulums, where they nerfed pendulums by putting their pendulum zones as part of your spell and traps, so you couldn't make a lot of pendulums and then set a whole bunch of spell and traps. This was a thing that actually was a thing that happened a lot. And number two, what they did with pendulums is they nerfed it so you have to use links to go into pendulums to spew out a whole bunch of pendulum monsters. You couldn't just do a whole bunch of that. You could bring out one at a time, and yes, this hurt things like DDD at the time and things of that nature, but you get what I'm saying. They curbed it a little bit. They made it more reasonable, I feel like. Links are, I think, balanced for the most part, besides things like Firewall Dragon, that's not once per turn, and you know I'm going with this. They feel like a different Synchro-esque deck. But the U-Link is where my problem stems from. Because the U-Link is stupid. Unless you have an out, a U-Link board means your opponent wins the game. Unless you have Raw Sphere Mode, Lava Golem, and a Kaiju's, if you don't have something, a U-Link board means you lose. And the fact that you could be a little U-Linked board, have a U-Link board built against you on turn one, and then it goes to your turn, and you can't do anything because you didn't draw your outs and you just automatically lose, sucks. And it's not fun, and it's just not healthy for the game that exists in an ether of sorts. It just doesn't, it shouldn't exist like that. It feels like the mechanic is being abused, and I hope and I wonder a lot if when we get to our next mechanic in, I think it is 2 years maybe, I think 2 years, when we get our next mechanic, that they're going to actually do something about this. That they may say, well, you no longer can U-Link your opponent. Because if you do that, that makes links balanced off the bat. When I heard about links, I was about them. And I've played with them, I'm like, okay, they're cool, I'm fine with them. And as more came out, I'm like, okay, they're cool. But the U-Link board, I am not cool with, and I don't think it's cool, and I don't think it's healthy for the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! that even exists. Take Firewall out of the equation even. U-Link boards just shouldn't exist in general, I feel like. I think that's something that needs to happen eventually, especially when we go to another mechanic, which I have a feeling, because they did it with pendulums, they may do something like that to links. Maybe. But let's get to our number one thing that I think needs to change for the betterment of the game in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So, the number one thing that I think needs to change in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! To continue its health and longevity in the game, because I love it, is something that has happened this year. A change. Greater than short prints, greater than U-Link boards, something involving a clock. Oh, going into time and the way it works right now. Now, I'm a player that's played the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Since the beginning. Played competitively from 2003 to pretty much 2014-15. All very competitively. Still play the game competitively, but just not as much. I was always fine with the old time rulings. I was perfectly fine. It gave you and your opponent enough time to see who would actually win the duel. And for the most part, to be honest, I'm okay with, for the most part, the new time rulings. For the most part, I say. I feel like that it makes tournaments happen faster, go faster, especially big tournaments. I can even see this happening at my locals when we implement, when we have the new policy over the course of the last few months. I've noticed this. Tournaments go faster. We usually would get done around 11, 12 o'clock, somewhere in there. Now we usually get done by 11 o'clock, and there's about 15, 20 minutes to trade and talk and hang out afterwards. So even at big events, I've even noticed this. From back when I played a long time ago, they would drag out, rounds would drag out. Now they're just clean, cut, one and done, and it feels more smooth. But I think, and the main concern I have, is they need to be adjusted in some way, shape, or form. Just tweaked, just worked on a little bit. Because I've made this comparison 1,000 times, and I will make it once again. When you know you have game, and the clock has a minute left on it, and your opponent is going to do everything and stall out on purpose, and you can't do anything about it, and you know you're going to win, and because you don't have enough time, you lose. Because you're in your draw phase or something stupid. I've seen it before where literally an opponent gives an opponent 20 seconds on the clock, past his turn, and they just don't have enough time to do everything. Enough time to draw their phase, enter main phase 1, time's out. Sorry, you lose. You didn't inflict enough damage, even though you could have turned it around. That's what I feel like it needs to be changed, because it literally feels like, if you've ever watched the second episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! From the original series, when Pegasus and Yugi are actually dueling, it feels like you are losing your grandfather's soul when you go into time in situations like that. Like, Pegasus is like, oh, Yugi, you would have won, but you lost because the clock ran out of time. Because of that, I'm going to steal your grandfather's soul, and you're going to have to come to my Duelist Kingdom tournament. I'm going to make you do that by stealing his soul. It kind of feels like that. It's like, I would have won if it wasn't for the stupid clock. So that's why I feel like I say changes need to be made. And what type of changes should be made? I feel like something along these lines should happen with the new time ruling. Either A, your opponent gets 1 turn after the current player's turn ends to respond, a full turn. Okay? Not a phase, a turn. Or at least both players should get 1 each remaining turn. Something along those lines. A full turn. It's my turn. The clock hits 0. Okay, I end my turn. I've done what I can. Your turn. If he doesn't have a response, if he doesn't have anything, cool. It makes me feel like the game is more, I don't want to say that, I know this is weird saying in Yu-Gi-Oh, but honorable. I feel so like cheeked out, like gypped, and when it happens to me sometimes, I'm not mad, but I'm like, really? And when it happens to my opponent, I feel bad for them, because I'm just like, what are you going to do? And I mean, yes, at a major event, you can call a judge, say he's slow playing, but if there's a minute, 2 minutes left on the clock, some combos take that long to do, actually. Legitly, even if you know them. I mean, remember Canahawk? From Ritual Beast? Canahawk search. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You know, like, it takes time sometimes to do combos. Especially with certain decks. Like Flower Cardians. Yeah, that takes some time to set up and to think through your plays. So, like, either you have a response or you don't. But I feel like a full turn is better than just a phase. When your opponent can go, okay, there's 30 seconds left on the clock, in my turn, you go, draw phase, I get standby phase 1, up time. You lose, you have less life points. When, oh, I could have done this and won. If you've had this happen to you, you will understand where I'm coming from. It's annoying. And I say this even as I've gotten better with dealing with the new time rules. It is stupid. It is annoying. It needs to be readjusted slightly. I like it. I think it's cool. I think it's more efficient, but it needs to be readjusted slightly. Because I've seen duels that take long just because they take long. I've seen people stall out just to stall out. And I've seen opponents and heard stories of opponents saying, yeah, there's a minute left on the clock. I'm just going to stall out until the clock runs out. And there's nothing you can do. There is nothing you can do. And that's why it's so important now to just keep an eye on that clock. Like, I'm looking at that clock so much now compared to when I used to, where I'm like, okay, at least I will get a turn afterwards to respond. Now, no such luck. You literally want to have that clock down with a minute left pretty much on your turn so you can stall out. Not saying that's not dirty. It is, but that's Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. What you gonna do? And that's why I say it's comparable to what happened in the second episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! It needs to be readjusted. That's what I feel like. It's a good ruling. I like it, but readjust it, please. For the love of Pete. It's really annoying. But tell me what you think about these changes, guys, overall. Do you think they should happen? Do you have any other suggestions that should change to help make the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Better? Let me know down in the comments section below. I'd really like to hear about it, and maybe we'll make another video about this later down the road. But till next time, take care, have fun dueling, good luck dueling, and I'll see all of you guys next time. Take care, everybody. Hang on, what was the number 2 thing I was going to do? Give me a second, Mike. I'm trying to remember. It was... What was it? I'm thinking here. Give me a second, Mike. Just fast forward. So it was that, and then it was... Next one was what? I'm having a brain fart, jeez. Okay, it was time rolling. That was one of them. And what was the top one? I'll come right back. Give me a second.